with our Lockpick Village panel. Our panel is here from Oak City Locksport. So we have our director, which is Patrick McNeil, Jeremy are all directors, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Patrick McNeil, Jeremy Thomas, Tom Crouse, and Alek's son. All members of Oak City Locksport, which is a local lockpicking organization. I'm your moderator, Squeak. Great to see so many familiar faces. So Patrick, I'm going to turn it over to you to start.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. I wanted to make sure we kind of flip this around, even though Squeak is our moderator. Squeak was actually the person who started Oak City Locksport, and not many people actually realize that. So Squeak, I wanted to... I wanted to recognize that, but also kind of turn it around. Like, we didn't have a local lockpicking group, obviously, but why did you start Oak City Locksport, and why did you decide it should be Oak City Locksport versus another chapter of Tool?
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. So many years ago when I came into this community, which is at this point like almost 15 years ago, basically because I had a crush on this guy, and he was really into hacker conferences, and I was a third grade teacher, but I was like, okay, I guess I'll go to a hacker conference. And the only thing I could do at these hacker conferences was the lockpicking. I just had no knowledge of anything else, so I really kind of immersed myself in lockpicking, and just from the get-go really thought it was so cool. It was something that I had never even heard of. I didn't even know it was a thing. And fast forward a couple of years of doing this and being in this community, I thought, well, I wish we had something like this, in Raleigh. This is only at DEF CON or at these hacker conferences that we go to, but there's nothing in Raleigh. And being just a type A know-it-all person, I was like, I will start a lockpicking group in Raleigh with all of my vast knowledge of lockpicking now. So Oak City Locksport was started basically in my living room in downtown Raleigh. Our first meeting, I think it was me, Patrick, Ryan Lynn, who's here somewhere, and Cyrus. So
boyfriend.
4 people, huh?
Your boyfriend?
Right, my boyfriend at the time. So a couple of people. I had been in touch with Tool about starting a chapter in Raleigh. And at the time, like I said, I was a teacher. I was I think in my second or third year of teaching. I was really poor. And it came down to just the money. You had to pay to start a Tool chapter. I wasn't able to do that. And so I just kind of branched out on my own. And that is how Oak City Locksport came to be. Patrick, from the get-go, was always a really active member, so helpful. He really had a lot of the knowledge that I didn't have as far as the actual lock sport, and then also just running a group. So over the years, Patrick became more involved. I got married, had kids, kind of had to become less involved, and Patrick, for the last several years, has completely taken it over and run it and done an amazing job, honestly, far beyond anything that I could have personally done. So just everything that Oak City Locksport is right now is all thanks to Patrick, and he's done such an incredible job. So just a little round of applause for Patrick for getting this off the ground and continuing to carry the torch. So yes, I started it, but it is not mine now. It is all Patrick's.
Thanks, Katie.
So I just want to start out with a quick question. So I had mentioned that when I started going to hacker conferences, the Lockpick Village was really the only thing that was accessible to me and was really what got me into hacker conferences. So Jeremy, I want to start with you. Why have a Lockpick Village at a hacker conference?
All right. Well, first of all, I have to say kind of the whole pay it forward. My first experience picking locks was actually Carolina Con, 10 years ago. So my first exposure to it, same. So for those that were around and involved, thank you, because that was what got me hooked into this fun little rabbit hole that we love to go down. So as far as having it at a conference, I go back to the hacker ethos. And I'm going to start, I'll define hacker, because, modern media, hacker is, doing something evil with a computer. But long before there were even computers, a hacker was a term, and it's just figure out how something works. Can you manipulate it? Can you modify it? Can you make it do something you want to do? And Locksport is a perfect marriage of the same kind of principles you use for hacking with computers. It's find something, poke at it, figure out how it works, and once you understand how it works, that it introduces, okay, well, now I know how to actually make it do something I want it to do without a key, or, bypassing it or shimming it, all kinds of things. But it's the perfect marriage of, figuring out how something works and taking advantage of it for good or bad. So, and that's, to me, the hacker ethos, and so perfect marriage with a hacker conference.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. Alek, I'm going to pop over to you as a new member of Oak City Locksport, and I'm assuming a new member of just lockpicking in general. What do you do to learn about it? So for people that are interested in coming in and wanting to know, like, how do I even get started? What advice do you have, or what can you offer to people?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of resources out on the internet. You can find, like, explanations, diagrams, all of that. But none of that really helps you more than just trying it out. So, coming to the village, practicing, trying out some of the 2-pins, just getting it in, like, your head. Because you can look at the diagrams and see all of it and understand it. But, you can't really understand it until you finally try it out yourself.
Awesome. So piggybacking on that, for any of our other panelists, what are some favorite channels or places where you have found to be useful or helpful as you're continuing to learn more about lock picking and the different kind of locks? And that's just whoever, if you want to pass
Anyone
the mic.
jump? I know Tom has an opinion.
Yeah. I'd started lock picking before watching YouTube or anything else like that. I'm a professional in the field, and part of my job is to protect the server rooms with the door, with the electronics on the door, et cetera, but I never had the locks. And we were out in the field one day, and there was a security cabinet we couldn't get into, and a guy I was with took it was just a little wafer lock, but, I had permission to drill it out because we needed to get in that cabinet right then, and he just pulled out a little screwdriver and a paper clip and made a rake and was in it in a couple of seconds. I'm like, I'm going to learn that. I was like, I'm doing that. So I've managed to acquire some lock picks completely independent of the internet or anything. I knew a locksmith, and he hooked me. I'll hook you up. I thought it was illegal. I had no idea. So I started in on the YouTubes, and that was back 2010 or something. So back then, Bosnian Bill was out there, and he's one of the only ones at the time. And he's put out almost 2,000 videos. A lot of them have no relation to what you'd be interested in, but whatever it is you would be interested in is probably somewhere in his postings. But he has he's the right amount of time. Lock picking lawyer takes 2 minutes. He takes all his extra minutes and donates them over to Lock Noob, who takes 15 minutes. And Bill would do about 6 or 8 minutes or something like that in the middle. So he would set a clock for 5 minutes to see if he could get into a lock, and if he couldn't, he declared himself beat. So he kind of hit it real. He would hit a lock that he had never picked before, and he would explain what he was doing as he was trying to analyze that lock and what he was going to do and why he was switching picks and other things. So I think the biggest thing I got from him was the cadence. Okay, this is the pace that you're going to go at. Lock picking lawyers like pin 1, pin 2, pin 3, pin 4, pin 5, we're done. But he practiced that lock before he did that. That attacking a lock and then taking that cadence, okay, well, this is what I'm looking for. I'm checking this. This is what I found. You get it. After a while, he was very careful to make sure that there were microphones on the locks that could hear the clicks and the noises coming from the lock. See, there's a lot to pick up on there. It's a lot of content.
Yeah, Bill was great because he was so authentic. Take it out of the package. I've never seen this before, and I'm going to start on it. And most people don't realize that Lockpicking Lawyer got started because of Bosnian Bill.
Almost everybody did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much. He's considered like the grandfather of lockpicking, modern lockpicking.
Yeah, I would just add on or reiterate that, Bill will actually give you the process as he's thinking it through. So if you're getting into it and trying to actually figure out how to approach something, his videos are really useful because, you've basically got a transcription of his brain as he's doing things like, well, this doesn't work, so I'll try this, or I'll try this. And so, you may know the basics, and when the basics don't work and you got to start coming up with a new plan of attack, he would always kind of share his thoughts, and so it gives you a lot of ideas of different things to try and a methodology for approaching things.
Yeah. I think Lock Noob has been doing a lot of good content lately too, and he's been doing like really shorter YouTube videos, like 1 minute or so, explaining some of the basic concepts that kind of people forget about going back to basics.
One of the other things about Bosnia and Bill, so he's got the YouTube channel Bosnia and Bill, but he has had a website called Lock Lab. And if you go to the Lock Lab website, there were links to all the videos, and then he also had the videos broken up by category, like challenge locks or beginner's locks or beginner's techniques or something like that. But he also has a where to buy kind of a tab. Now, I found that one critical for me. So, you click on that, and he gives a list of all these places that are selling them. And he says it's either Lock Lab approved or not approved. And so, it's green or red. You can look down the list of suppliers, and you will see the ones that he's saying, these guys will rip you off. So that put me onto all the really good suppliers and stuff. But it was through those resources that he had pioneered. He set up to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, thanks. So this is a good segue into kind of something that I feel like comes up a lot, and I definitely remember it coming up when I was new to lockpicking, but that's the legality of lockpicking, right? So owning the tools, is it okay to pick locks? So I want to start with Patrick here, but I'd love to hear from everybody your thoughts or any stories that you have around this. But Patrick, can you talk to us a little bit about those misconceptions or just what people might need to know about, hey, is this illegal or?
Yeah, so a lot of people think that lockpicking and possessing lockpicks is illegal. We have seen some friction from some locksmiths in particular who will show up to meetings. We had one guy who showed up and said, "You guys are all doing this, it's all illegal.
You're taking our
and
jobs.
You're taking our jobs." So I do now have like the full North Carolina statutes around lockpicking and burglary tools. So it's like, show me where it's illegal. Most states in the United States are what we call intent states. So if you have lockpicks, the state has to prove that you had intent to commit a crime. So if you're walking down the street and for some reason you're stopped and the police are justified in frisking you and they find lockpicks, hey, you weren't trying to break in anywhere, perfectly legal, it's fine to possess them. However, if it's 3 in the morning and you're on somebody else's property and you're crouched in front of their doorway and they find them, well, you obviously had intent to get into that location and you possessed burglary tools. So the other thing that is regulated in the state of North Carolina is the profession of locksmithing. So you learn this new skill in the village, that's great. You cannot just start charging your friends and neighbors, I'm $20, I'll open your door. It is licensed, it's a licensed profession in order to protect you as a consumer so that any Tom, Dick, or Harry can't put up a placard and say, like, I'm a locksmith, and they end up just drilling out locks and destroying things when they could potentially open something in a non-destructive manner. So it's there to protect consumers.
And I'm just going to jump in to say, when I first started, I remember Deviant Olaf, who, if you know him, is another big name in the lockpicking industry, always said, never pick a lock that you don't own or depend on. So I think that's kind of a good rule of thumb. Like, it's great to go to these villages and try and practice even on your own locks at your house, but know that you could break it, you could ruin it, and so you don't want to be practicing on your front door lock.
Yeah, because
love to hear from other people about that.
yeah, practice on something you don't depend on. It's rare that you will break it, but it can happen. The most frequent, probably, breaking a pick off in the keyway. Once that sliver of metal is in the keyway, now you can't get the key in that door. And if that's your front door to your house, that's a problem. So, don't use something you depend on. You can damage a lock. It's infrequent, but it can happen. So, buyer beware.
Yeah, I mean, just like working on your own locks and stuff that you have already lying around, just as long as you don't need to use them, that's kind of how I started off. I had a few that I was never going to use, just sitting. It was a tiny little Brinks brass one, so that's what I ended up working on. And then, never picked my front door or anything. You kind of just, what I ended up doing was going on eBay and finding the lots. They're pretty cheap. They're not really the most high quality locks, but I think that's one of the great things to go for if you're just starting out, because you can get a whole lot of like low quality or like master locks and stuff, and that's the type of thing that you'd want to learn and practice on eventually. Yeah.
Awesome. So that was going to be my next question is, so for people that,
segue there,
yeah,
Alek.
great segue. So for people that are interested in like, yeah, I want to learn more about this, where can people just get locks to practice on or to play with, and where are your favorite places, and kind of how do you, I know maybe this is kind of even more for Patrick, this part of the question, but I know OCL, you guys have just so many locks and you're constantly replenishing them. So how do you replenish? How do you know which ones to get?
I go to Tom, who donates a lot of locks.
Yeah, they get them from me.
You're their dealer? You're their lock dealer?
I work
He's
at,
hooked up.
I work in physical security. I work in, but I work for hospitals, military bases, power plants, museums, and all this other stuff. And I'll just ask. If there's somebody that I'm talking to in facilities, I'll just tell them, I said, hey, my hobby is Locksport. They go, oh, what? And I said, you got any locks around like you've lost the keys for or something? And they go, well, not really, but we got this, and they bring out a bucket of locks, And I mean, I've walked away from, I went to a supply house and I saw a lock on the display case that there was no box or anything. I said, is that, do you even have a key for that? If y'all ever get rid of it, I'll take it. He said, oh, the key's in the back, but we have some other locks that we can't sell if you want that. And he said, oh, about 6 or something. He brought them out. I ended up with 100 locks, brand new in the box, discontinued. It's like, okay, and I was running out the door and shooting pictures to everybody. But you just ask. I asked my family and my friends. A lot of the older people in your family, my aunts and uncles. They have them. They don't throw anything away, and they'll give them to me in a minute. And so I've got a lot of locks that half of the locks I have I didn't pay a nickel for, and I've got a few hundred. So I just ask online, stuff like that. Every now and then I'll see a lock that I really want, and you're not going to find in the field. They're not sold around here, And I'll kind of shop that out a little bit, but I don't mind paying a few bucks for here and there for a lock that just is my bucket list lock that it's going to take me a long time to to get through. It's like I have to drink 300 beers to get through that one lock. So what's the price of 300 beers versus the lock? So I would just say ask around. That's the fastest way to get stuff, and realize that you could damage it. So don't borrow a lock. I mean, it's like it's yours. If you open it, you could be so happy you'd return it and give it back to them, but you got to be prepared that it could damage the locks.
Unless you borrow it from a Locksport friend, and we kind of know the score.
Yeah.
What might happen, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's just what we do.
Alek brought up a good place though too. eBay. You can find like the lot of 100 locks or 50 locks or whatever. I think Squeak, you had gotten a lot or two from eBay at one point. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll pay more for shipping than you'll actually pay for the
say,
lock.
the shipping is what gets you on that.
Yeah.
So if you can find it local, then that's much better. Does that change with skill level as far as the type of locks that you get? So Jeremy, can you talk a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously when you start, you're just looking for some locks to work with, and you'll find a lot of the more common, commercial master locks, things like that, because that's what everybody goes to Home Depot and buys. But once you get deeper into it and you actually kind of learn the differences between locks and the different styles of locks, you're likely to say, well, I would like to try a lock like that. Those are going to be a little harder to come by. So, find a Lockpick Village. That tends to be a good spot to find
I
them.
think I know of one.
Yep. And also shameless plug, we have a meetup that meets once a month. So also an opportunity. So,
And you guys have merchandise too, right?
Yep.
So, and does that include some sort of like locks and that type of stuff? It's not just picks, right?
Yeah, we started, this is the first time that we started selling a progressive kick set as well as a repinnable mortise cylinder. So you are given 2 different keys and a variety of pins. So for some reason you can't pick the lock, you can take the caps off, dump it all out, build your own lock from 1 pin all the way up to 5. So.
Yeah, and the progressive locks is really probably the first ones when I got started. And so really what that means is just like a lock with 1 pin, and once you can feel comfortable with that, then you can try a lock with 2 pins all the way up to 5 pins. I just want to ask something that's not on this sheet, so I hope I don't throw anybody, but you guys have talked about the pins, but Jeremy, you just mentioned like different types of locks. So you just talk for a second about like very broadly, I know there's a zillion kinds, but very broadly, what are the different types of locks? So most people have like a pin tumbler lock in their front door, but what are the other types of locks that people might encounter or see?
Yeah, well, we don't have enough time to go over all of them, but common ones, so tubular locks. Think of vending machines, the little round lock. Those are pretty frequent. Disc detainers are becoming more and more popular now, so it's a series of discs that spin, so kind of think of like the old bicycle dials or like a Caesar type of thing. Wafer locks. Dimple locks are more of a European thing, but starting to show up here too.
Combination lock?
Yeah, there's the whole lock boxes, key boxes, combo locks. There's a lot, Patrick has the encyclopedia that's like 150 pages, 200 pages, that there's a lot of different varieties. So that's, kind of backtracking, that was if you want to get exposed to some of those, that's where the meetups are good, and meeting people in the community, because invariably I will have something that somebody wants to pick, and they probably have something I want to pick. So, hey, you borrow this, I'll borrow that, you get some exposure.
So are all those different types of locks, like the wafer locks, all those, the dimple locks, are all those pickable in the same way?
Tooling changes a little bit. So conceptually, most of them are the same, but the distinction really, I guess, is that as you get into different styles of locks, you're probably going to need different tools that are more appropriate for the lock. So like a dimple lock, if you picture a key and you have the teeth on the side of the key, dimple, instead of having them cut on the side of the key, they're on the face of the key. So when you're thinking about the key weight, you don't have the height of the key, you have the width of the key to work with. So you need something a lot smaller and narrower to work within a much smaller space. Disc detainers kind of became a big thing 3-4 years ago. So Bosnian Bill and Lockpicking Lawyer got together and actually designed their own tool that became kind of the rage in the Locksport community, and everybody was after it. But it's a different style of lock, so you just need a different style of tool to approach it.
So basically what I'm hearing is you have to keep throwing money at new tools, right?
To some extent. It depends on how far you want to go down the rabbit hole.
It's like fishing or shoes or whatever. It's like, oh, I've got to have that one.
Yeah, and there's a ton of different tools too, just like a ton of different locks. I'm going to go to Alek for this one. We've just been talking about all the different kinds of locks that there are. So if you encounter a lock that you've never seen before, or you find a new lock at maybe one of these meetups or somewhere that you want to play with, what would be your advice on how to even get started if I know nothing about this lock?
Well, yeah, of course, if it's at a meetup, your first thing should always be ask someone who's already there.
Ask Patrick. That's what I do if I'm anywhere. I'm like, just go ask Patrick.
He knows just about everything about all of the ones we got. But if you're not at a meetup, you just have one or bought one in a lot or something. Typically, first look for branding, anything. You can just go to look up that lock, see if you can find anything on there. If not, you can always take a picture, and there's a pretty large Locksport community in there, so there's like the Lockpickers United Discord server where you could probably send it in, ask, and someone's going to know what you have.
Or Reddit.
There's
a big Reddit community too.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know any of those subs just to plug in case people want to?
Well, there's just r/lockpicking, and I think there's definitely some more
Locksport,
there.
our Locksport, yeah.
Yeah, it was like the Lockpicking 101 forum as well. Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing too is there's certainly references online, but if you pick up a lock and you can look at it, typically the QA is going to give away a lot of what type of lock it is. You know, is it really blocky and thick, but at a different orientation than what you're used to? It's probably a dimple. You can look in and see pins coming down. It's probably a pin tumbler. And a lot of lock picking sets will have a half diamond type of pick. So it's just got one single bump on it. If you flip it upside down, the other side is perfectly flat. So you can put it into a pin tumbler lock and push all the pins up. And as you pull it out, you'll hear the clicks for the individual pins. So now you know, is this a 4-pin or 5-pin or 6-pin lock? So you know a little bit about what you're dealing with. The other thing you can do is put in your tension wrench and crank down on it and just go in and out with the rake a few times, and you'll figure out if it has security pins, because that sucker will turn a little bit and lock itself up. You won't be able to manipulate some of the pins, so you know it's either got some spool pins or serrated or something like that. So just kind of a way of IDing what you're working with.
And Google everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's not a lock out there that's not been explored on YouTube, because if it's unpickable, it's the holy grail, you know. So there's like several locks that are like have not been picked live yet, and it's like everybody's trying to get it. They want to be the ones to say, you know, the first ones to ever pick it. So that basically means that pretty much anything you've ever laid your eyes on is on YouTube and explained in detail. The lock has been taken apart. They discussed generations as it's evolved through its, you know, and you can actually, I've got a second generation Corbin Russ one or something like that. So you can, it's all out there, and it's so easy because you can read a lot of stuff and you can look at a lot of pictures, but when you see it live and they're zooming in on tiny pieces and stuff, you get that three-dimensional image in your head, and that's really the best part or the funnest part for me about lock picking is solving that puzzle. It's just a big puzzle. And I just, you know, it's a challenge. I want to be able to do that, and being able to see it. Later on, you'll take locks apart and gut them and yourself and take them all apart, spread out all the pieces, maybe modify it, put it all back together. You know, some of the kits we sell can take apart and put back together pretty easily. They're modified in a way that don't come from the field. But it's you look at the lock, you try to identify the lock, and take what you know about it. You could start, or you can look it up.
I was going to say, I think the belt system from the Reddit lockpicking forum has helped that a lot. So the Reddit lockpicking forum has kind of ranked different types of locks as to their difficulty, and they kind of follow this martial arts belt system. And in order to progress through the ranks, you actually, at different points, have to post a video of you picking that lock live, gutting it, you know, showing how it works and all that. So a lot of people will post those videos on YouTube in order to prove that they picked the lock. So if it wasn't for that, there would be less of a reason for people to put that online.
So kind of keeping in the same vein as talking about tools, we know half diamonds are a girl's best friend. But we'd love to hear from each of you. What are your favorite tools, your favorite manufacturers, and ones that you stay away from? Hint, if you work for Master Lock, this would be a good time to step out of the room.
How about we start with Alek?
Okay, yeah, we'll start with Alek, and then love to hear from everyone.
Yeah, well, for tools, I'm a big fan of like the Sparrows lineup for tension wrenches, Topic QA, Bono QA. That's kind of where I start off. I got one of the kits from there. But then I quickly moved up to take the Jimmy Long picks. I'm pretty sure they're still out of stock right now, but they're some of the best ones.
They sell out fast, yeah.
Yeah, they've got nice handles. You know, they're good width sizes, so it's like they work pretty well. They're well made.
Jeremy?
I think my SS Devs are probably my favorite picks at this point, just because they're a thinner profile, and so you can actually kind of snake them around into a lock a little bit easier than something.
What is an SS Dev, Jeremy?
It's a hook. It's just smaller profile and thinner. But Honestly, I would say for tools, tensioners. Tensioners are actually usually far more important than your actual picks. And if you haven't learned top of keyway, learn top of keyway, because that completely changes how you approach a lot of locks, because instead of tensioning down at the bottom, you're actually putting it up just in the very top of the face of the, where you can see that pin, and that way you have all that space below it to actually work and manipulate your tools in there. So tensioners, especially top of keyway, is a big thing. Just having a variety. There is no perfect pick. Every lock is a little different. Some things are going to work better than others. So have a basic set and just kind of experiment. If you're trying something that's not working, let me try a half diamond instead of a hook. That often is all it ends up taking, is you just find something that mirrors the key better, makes it work better.
Yeah, and even tools that are your favorite tools, like it really just is so lock dependent. The keyway might be a little bit more narrow, so your tool that you've used on all these other locks doesn't even fit in this new lock. Tom, favorites from you?
Yeah, there's a lot, because I might want a hook from one manufacturer and a rake from another one. So my go-tos are Sparrows, very, very high quality. You're talking about $4, $5 each. I don't buy the whole huge kits, or when I started, I'd buy the kit, but I'd only use 3 out of them. And now I'd just rather buy 3 of the one pick that I do like, and I've got my backups. So the Sparrow's Monkey Paw is a very good pick. It's thicker than a lot of locks will allow, but it's, for the ones that does fit, it's strong, it's durable, it's really got a good, it's got a good feel to it. That was designed by Lock Noob. So I prefer that. I've used Peterson's. They're a little bit more high dollar, but every now and then they do sales where you can get them kind of cheap. There's some other brands out there that are higher dollar that I've not gotten into. Jeremy was dead on about the tensioners. The good thing about tensioners is they typically can be kind of cheap in a way, because they don't have to have that exact precision steel, because they're thicker. The picks have to be, you want the thinnest, strongest picks. So that's very high quality steel. But on tensioners, they can get a little bit thicker, so then it becomes more an issue of design. My favorite commercial one is Covert Instruments sells the ergo turners. And I've gone through a whole bunch of them, and I've taken other ones and bent them up and made them turners like that. But that set for 4 tension tools, maybe $20 or something, just does everything it needs to do. And then you move into modifying and making your own stuff. You could buy a pick, but hit it with some 800 grit sandpaper and polish it up a little bit. It'll act like a pick twice its value. It just takes a few minutes. I've designed a tensioner now that is there's none on the market like it. And so I designed it. I've gotten the tools together. It's not in production, but I've given away a few of them, and they've gotten pretty good reviews so far. So don't be afraid to experiment, getting pieces of metal and making things and doing things. But
yeah, as I say, squeak is part of the question. Was like, what do you avoid or not go to?
Oh,
Pretty
yeah.
much, if it's on Amazon,
yeah,
it's a no-go for me.
you can improve anything. But I mean, if it's really garbage, like if it's metal that just bends and won't snap back into place, it's like, it looks like a lockpick. It was only $10, and it came with a clear acrylic padlock that you get and it's like,
That's
no,
the first
no,
warning
no.
sign,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you got some experience in buying crap, now and then you move on.
Yeah.
You open the box and it's all bent like a Christmas tree. It's like, okay, yeah, I got what I paid for.
Most of those guys like Lock Noob, not Lockpick and Lawyer, since he's got his own group now, but Lock Noob, and then Bosnia and Bill before him would review things online, talk about where it came from. They would just give an honest review of what was good and what was bad, so you can see a lot of that stuff.
I'll give one last shameless plug, Katie, for the Oak City Locksport pick kit that we put together. It's basically the same company that makes picks for Lockpicking Lawyer, for Red Team tools. It's a single supplier. I worked with him to put together a custom kit. So a lot of the picks that you get in the big starter sets that you end up, as Tom said, I use 3. Well, I picked my favorite picks from lots of different sets and put together what I felt was the most useful. So you've got a very small number of picks and tension wrenches, but you've kind of got the best of what you can get out there versus a lot of useless crap.
Yeah, so warning, once you learn how to pick a lock, whenever you see lock picking happening in movies or TV, you'll find yourself yelling at the screen, "They're not even using a tension wrench!"
All the time.
What if you don't have any lock picks, or you find yourself kind of in a bind and you don't have your lock picks? What are some tools or other things that you can use that might not be official lock picking tools to pick a lock?
So the first lock I ever picked was the one that I saw this guy pick, and it was a control cabinet, had a cam lock on it, which is what you see on desks or fire panels or other little things, just called a cam lock. And he took a paper clip, made a little diamond out of it, and then used the smallest screwdriver in his tool bag to put in there and just twist as a tensioner, and it went right in. So there was that. But I carry a little, small set in my pocket, that kind of a thing. So, and then I have a set in my tool bag for work, or my door panel or something like that.
You end up having like 10 sets when it's all said and done.
Well, you got to do something with
and all that, right?
Yeah, you got to do something with those 30 or 40 other picks that came in the kit that you only use. So that you can modify those and use them for other things.
Any other cool stories about unconventional tools that
I was
you
going
guys
to say,
have?
I always carry around, in my phone case, I've got a few picks, but I carry around a really thin piece of aluminum to use as a combination decoder, and you can use some aluminum can to shim open some locks, where the shackle, actually you can kind of wrap the aluminum around the shackle, get down behind it, and rotate it, and it'll actually push I'm forgetting the term for it, the pawl, yeah, it'll push the pawl away from the shackle. So, and that's something like you can find a can on the side of the road kind of thing, so there's always cans available. You just need some scissors or a knife.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes into a whole different rabbit hole that we probably don't want to go down too far,
Right,
but
yeah. Be
there's,
careful.
there's the whole aspect of picking locks, and then there's the whole other genre of bypassing locks. And there's a lot of locks that have flaws, shimming it, just reaching through the keyway and actually getting up to the actuator in the lock and just turning the actuator without even messing with the pins. A lot of things. So, slipping latches. So, like, where is it? Con badges. Hey, you see it in the movies, but yeah, you can, like the credit card, slide it in a latch and open it. So,
Sounds
Hacker
like
101.
maybe some of these stories can be shared at when we're not recording. So go to the village.
But Hacker 101, you just take it, live off the land, see what's available to you, and see if you can make it work for you.
So you guys have a lot. Oh, sorry, Alek.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to build off Tom, as he said, the person used a paper clip. I found, so I don't have that many extra spare kits yet. So I carry around a little spool of steel wire, I found. It works a whole lot better than standard paper clips, and if you can find something to tension, it's going to hold up a whole lot better. So, yeah, that's just a little thing, everyday carry type thing.
Yeah.
You know.
So we see a lot in the village of the master padlocks, the quick set cylinders, and that's really what you see a lot of in the stores as well. And they don't seem really secure, right? Those are kind of probably the easiest ones to pick. So what are some lock brands or types that you actually recommend if somebody is now walking away from this kind of second guessing their own locks?
As you should, yeah. You want to start?
So when you get into the sport and you go in deeper and deeper, you learn how to take a lock apart. And if you do that, you can modify it. You can put in different kinds of springs. You can put in different kinds of pins. You can make it bump proof. You can make it very difficult to pick. You can actually pick the bitting of your own key and get it from a locksmith and do it that way. If you're not interested in something like that, there's a low end and the high end. On the high end, the real number one thing is key control. They basically use blank keys that nobody can duplicate. Nobody can actually just take you loan someone a key to get in your house, but they stop off at the Home Depot first and get a copy themselves, or if somebody's vacationing or staying with you for a week, they have to have a certificate to order another key. And so that's the key control of it. One key, one lock, or two keys, whatever it is, you have control over that. It's registered to you, and no one else can get it without your permission, even just a blank. The next thing is that's on the higher end. There's some dimple picks, dimple locks like a
Multi-pick
multi-pick,
or multi-lock?
multi-lock.
Yeah,
Multi-lock is
multi-lock.
like, there's some of those that locksmiths will recommend as high-end security. I'm still looking to see if there's a major vulnerability, but the Kwikset Smart Key is actually
The new version, yeah.
the
Gen
newer
3.
version. It's Generation 3, and you're not going to pick it. It's been picked online, but Lockpick and Lawyer can pick it, and a few others can pick it, but it's not an intuitive pick. It's got a mechanism in there that's not. It looks like a key. It feels right. You can use a regular key on it, but it's all the mechanisms in there more like gears than they are pins, and you're going to have if you're good at that, then I don't need to be talking to you. So.
And it's actually one they sell at Home Depot
Yeah,
and
and it's
Lowe's and
cheap.
stuff like that, right? So,
Yeah, you get a hefty padlock for $16, and it's rekeyable. You can turn around and key it to your house. So it's a very functional design. Schlage tried to do one, but they had a lot of problems with it, and they pulled it off the market. Kwikset has fixed their problems. Like I said, they're on Generation 3, and it's pretty much their go-to on the shelves right now. So bang for the buck, it's a good one.
Yeah, and then as far as like padlocks go, I typically point people at like an Asus or an Abloy or something like that.
Right. You're not going to find those on the shelf though, but you
No.
can go to a local locksmith, and they usually keep that stuff on the wall.
Either that or just Amazon.
Yeah, you can find
Or,
Yeah.
or like
quality
the,
stuff on Amazon too if you know what you're looking for.
the pack locks I've really taken a liking to as well. It's PACLOCK. The CEO of the pack lock company actually engaged with the Locksport community. Like, okay, pick this. Bam, okay, we got it open. What can I do to improve the design? So he's put in a lot of improvements, and they're reasonably priced. You're definitely going to pay 3-4 times what you would for a typical Master number 3 that everybody has, but what you get in protection is totally worth it.
Yeah, I'd say, one, you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
It's not, there's exceptions to every rule, but spend a little more, you will generally get a much better quality lock. So that's one. Also, stuff that's newer. I mean, the industry has taken notice of the Locksport community, and, there's so much content out there on the web about how to do it. They're now kind of forced into, well, we've actually got to do better because people are exposing that we were selling crap for 50 years and nobody really realized it. So there's a lot of the stuff that we used to pick on that the new versions that you go pick up are really actually pretty good locks. I had a friend that bought just a basic Schlage deadbolt for his house, and he's like, can you see if this is pickable and what we can do? And I'm like, oh yeah, this will be a piece of cake. 30 minutes later, I'm like, okay, you actually, maybe it was a fluke, but you can get some better stuff out there. So the newer stuff definitely makes an improvement too.
So could you guys just each give us one very quick, like if you had to recommend, if people just want to walk out of here and say, I just want to make my lock a little more secure, or I want to make my house a little more secure, and you could just say one thing, what could somebody do?
I'd say, assuming it's one that you can disassemble, repin it. Change the bidding. Bidding solves a lot of problems. Or if you're buying it, you can see the key. Look for something where it's mountains and valleys on the key. If all those teeth are a straight line, then you don't actually need a key. You just need something straight to go in and lift the pins at the right height or the right angle. So find a key where it's exaggerated changes, because then it actually requires somebody with skill to pick it.
Y'all do this and pass it over. I mentioned, like, if you're going to put in a new one, like the Kwikset Smart Key, something like that. But if you've got existing stuff and you just want to make it secure with what you've got, and you don't know how to repin anything, make sure the fit of the door is correct. Make sure that the door doesn't have a flaw the way they can get it with a credit card. The doors are designed to prevent that, but if the door doesn't fit, that design doesn't mean anything. If you have a deadbolt, 10, 15, 20 years ago, these deadbolts came with, 1-inch screws for the latch. So you have this deadbolt, but then the latch goes on the door with 1-inch screws. That part of the door is pine. There's nothing there that's got any strength to it whatsoever. You could peel it apart with your fingernail. So what I would do is, what they've done now, and what you could do to the old ones, is take that 1-inch screw out and get a 4-inch screw, drive it through all that and into the studs on the back side of all that. Put in a couple of big, heavy 4-inch screws, go all the way through a couple of studs farther in. That lets the deadbolt do its job. Otherwise, it's just sitting there holding back a marshmallow.
Alek, did you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with Tom that typically the lock isn't the worst bit of security on a door, but once you solve all of those problems in the same vein as Jeremy was talking about, rekeying it, typically swapping out if standards for any security type pin, because then not just anyone, even if it's, not the best bidding, someone can't rake it, things like that, to remove the low-level attacks from the equation.
Patrick, last.
My contribution is adopt a dog from your local animal shelter. Yeah, I mean, having visible cameras, a dog barking, all of that, people are typically going to try to bust in the door or break a window. So having a deterrent so they move on to the next house and not yours is always a help.
It's always about the weakest link.
Yeah.
So, I have a camera next to my door, so I don't care what the lock is because I'm going to see them coming up to it before they ever get to it.
Yeah. Adopt, don't shop.
Yep. And clean up around your house. Don't leave bricks and tools laying next to your windows because you just gave them what they need to break the window to get in. So.
Yeah, and lighting too.
Yep.
That's another big thing. So I just want to end. I want to give a little bit of time at the end for questions, but I kind of want to end with Patrick. I talked a little about how he's kind of taken over OCL and really made it into something that's just above and beyond any hopes and dreams I would have ever had for that club. And Patrick, you recently even become very official as a 501c3. So we'd love to hear just a little bit about that exciting news and kind of the future of the OCL, and then we'll open it up to some questions from the audience.
Yeah, so becoming a 501c3 was a bit of a hassle with all the paperwork and all that. But I kind of saw some advantages in that, frankly, if I get hit by a bus at some point, I've got stuff that belongs to the club, so there's other people that can kind of carry the torch and keep things going. But, I will typically sink quite a bit of my own personal money into the club every year. So I saw it as a way to, fundraise and actually have a bank account so then we can replace our locks. And our volunteers that work in the village, they don't get paid anything, and these green T-shirts are T-shirts that they all bought. So I want to be able to provide some sort of value to our volunteers. And then there are, supply houses and stuff that if I want to buy from them, now I don't necessarily have to pay state sales tax to purchase. And we can accept donations from people, both monetary and in-kind goods from locksmiths or whoever wants to donate a lock, and now they can get actually a tax break for it. So it becomes a little bit more of a benefit to whoever's doing the donation. And I'd like at some point to get out of sinking $1,000 of my own money or more every year into the club. So,
thanks again, Patrick. Yeah. Any questions? We have about 5 more minutes, so love to hear any questions that you guys have. I can bring a mic. Yeah.
I was just going to say, Habitat for Humanity is a good place for cheap locks.
Yeah, he said Habitat for Humanity, definitely good place for cheap locks.
You can also actually go to like Home Depot and Lowe's, go up to the customer service desk. They sometimes have some that they will give to you or sell to you that people buy them and return them because they're, there's no guarantee it's a working lock, but for what you're looking for, that's fine probably, because you just want something to poke around at and learn from. So that's also
Yeah, and even when I was getting started, one thing I liked doing is just like taking the lock apart and just seeing what it looked like on the inside. Just because again, I was so new to it, and it was just something so foreign to me. So that would be great if the lock doesn't work. It's something you can take apart and look at. Any other questions for our panelists?
So I see a lock advertised military grade. So that means it's unpickable, right?
Yeah, right. So military grade, it's just like we hear military grade encryption. There's no such thing. I generally don't trust any of the ratings that they put on locks. Like you see the master locks in the big box hardware stores, and it's like security rating 9, but it has the same core in it that you have in the master lock number 3. All they're referring to is the amount of steel on the body of the padlock, not the actual lock itself. So
Yeah, on the military grade, so we're having a lock swap later on today. What time?
1 o'clock.
So 1 o'clock. So I brought some locks, and one of them is actually a brand new in the box Master Lock U.S. military grade padlock, and all the manufacturers, all the main manufacturers manufacture those with the U.S. on it. That just means it meets a certain spec that they could sell in bulk. So usually they do contain some security pins or something, but other than that, it's like the standards for a long time were just like, okay, there's a lock on it, so therefore you're not supposed to touch it. I work with some federal sites, and they are switching over to disc detainers, nice OCL boys, stuff like that, some $100 locks now instead of the $5, $10 locks or $15 locks that they've been using. But yes, like I say, it was kind of a joke. There was nothing special about that except that they were usually brass and kind of shiny.
Yeah, I did kind of blow off the question a little bit, but you're right. There are standards that manufacturers have to comply with in order to sell to the federal government. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of locks also. They're not specifically made for security. So you would have thought the U.S. locks would be made for security, but I think they were just made to look good to the brass. The lockout tagout locks are plastic. They're plastic bodies, but they're fantastic learning experiences because they're typically extremely difficult on the inside. They're lightweight, but you can't put it on anything as a security feature, but you definitely can hang it on a live electrical panel. So there's a whole series of very high-quality locks that are common when you're around facilities or hospital or any place that has like a utility plant or major facilities. They have these lockout, tagout type locks. And most of those are much higher quality. Nothing you would find at Home Depot, but you would find them at industrial supply houses. But a lot of times these guys will just give them to you because they lost the key. Sometimes they're repinnable, so you can get into it, repin it, and match it up to a key that doesn't have a lock. So there's a lot of fun to be had taking this stuff apart, learning it, putting it back together.
Any final questions?
So, Squeak kind of alluded to, really crappy examples of lockpicking movies and TV shows. Do you think it's the opposite, or you actually saw something where it's like, wow, they actually did a confusing job?
Mr. Robot always has it.
Yeah, maybe
That's the only time I've ever seen it in something I've watched.
Yeah, we actually were talking about that last night, and the only one that I vaguely recall, but I have to go back and watch it because it's been way too long, is I feel like there was actually a semi-legitimate lockpicking scene in Sneakers, but it's been 10, 15 years since I watched it, so it's a little hazy.
So the one thing I remember in Sneakers is basically like the main character like pulled out a set of lock picks and then he found that it had an electronic keypad on it. And he ended up, like,
Oh, yeah, and you kick the door open. Yeah.
hey guys, the right side's electronic keypad, and everyone goes like,
Yeah, when you think about like MacGyver, he like pulls out a hairpin and it's like dit, 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 and then it opens. So I think if you at least just see the tension wrench, that's the big thing that it's just never there. But in Mr. Robot, I remember there is a lockpicking scene in there, and he at least does have 2 tools.
Yeah, a lot of the TV ones, they have 2 tools, but they're 2 picks, and there's no tension wrench. Because they just look more interesting, but to Katie's point, like, as soon as they pull out a tension wrench, it's going to be a little bit better.
We talked to somebody before they made that movie.
Right. All right. Well, the Lockpick Village is opening right now. I think
now,
these
yeah.
guys are headed down there to open it, and they'll be open tonight until our dinner break, and then reopening again tomorrow. So please make it a point to stop by there, say hey, try to pick a lock, look around, share the information. Really appreciate all of our panelists and Oak City Locksport for being here. And I know that they're happy to answer any questions that you might have down in the village. So love to give them a round of applause.